everyone. Welcome to the tonight. Nice to see you again. We've got people from all over the world. We got some in South America tonight, which is different. So great to see everyone here and joining us. So I hope you're here as you're part of the Robots to the Rescue design competition, or if you're not, that you're just part of using Onshape for first and are looking to learn more about how you can actually use the Kit of Parts. So tonight, I will be speaking with you. I'm Mackenzie Brunell. I'm an academic application engineer at PTC. I'm actually an FRC alum, and then I volunteer as a mentor and then volunteer as an FTAA. And then Marcus Bernstein is going to be giving you an overview of the MK CAD parts library and how you can be using that. And then Mark Celli is also at the academic team at PTC, and he's going to be in the chat and helping to answer any questions as you have them throughout the night. So make sure to add those questions. If you have any, feel free to ask as we go along at any time. So for tonight, we're going to go through just a little bit of what that Robots to the Rescue competition is, and then we're going to talk a bit about using the Onshape parts for FRC, and then we'll have some time to answer some more questions at the end. And so that competition that I mentioned is to design a robot that solves a current world problem. You can sign up for this on the Onshape website. We're definitely looking for any submissions that we can get, and you'll have the opportunity to win grants for your team. The rules and guidelines can be found on our website as well. If you have any questions and you want any clarifications about these, definitely feel free to ask us. You can email first@ptc.com. We're always happy to answer any questions. This is our first time putting on this design competition, so we understand there may be some things that need to be clarified as we go along. And you can also sign up for email updates for the competition. If you have multiple people sign up as part of your team, that's totally fine if more than one person wants to get those email updates. And then we have plenty of resources out there for you. So we have an Onshape Learning Center. If you're new to CAD, there's a great learning pathway for you. Or if you're familiar with CAD and just want to learn how to switch into Onshape, we have another learning pathway for you as well. And then for these parts libraries, if you're part of FRC, this MK CAD part library that we're going to be talking about tonight is a great resource. And then for FTC, we also have another part library that FTC team 2901 is graciously put together. So if you want access to that, you can also email us. And if you want to see any of our previous webinars, you can look at our YouTube channel for all of those. And then this one will be recorded as well and put up on that YouTube channel. Just some important dates to remind you of. May 1st, you're going to be getting your form to submit your design, and then you have to submit by May 15th. And then throughout that period, we're going to be doing plenty of webinars to teach you more about using Onshape and get your team up to speed. So some of the future webinars we're going to be having are migrating a FIRST robotics team from another CAD system, working with the FTC Kit of Parts, and collaboration and versioning for your team. And then we'll have a team panel where some other teams that have been using Onshape can give you some answers, maybe how they've been using Onshape and been successful with it, and then preparing your submission. And finally, we'll have an office hour where teams can ask any questions they have before they create those final submissions. And so another poll question for you, just curious what teams are here tonight. If you can fill in, if you do respond to polleverywhere.com or pollev.com for this URL, just type in what team you're on. 342, 1156. Oh, looks like we got a few from 6328. Oh, 342 has quite a few people as well. It's awesome when you have a few people from your team all joining on. Onshape's definitely a great platform for multiple people to be doing CAD with. Oh, 6328 definitely got quite a few people here tonight. 4216. Got a bigger group too. We got a range of team ages, so some older and some newer teams on there. Give you just another minute to respond to this. And if you're the only person from your team here, again, we are going to be recording this. So I definitely encourage you to share the webinar and the recording with people on your team so that you can be collaborating and working together on Onshape. Or if you know of another team that might be interested, definitely, again, recommend sharing it out there. We're trying to do all of these to get teams knowledgeable. I know a lot of teams have been using Onshape for quite a while, but we'd like to add more resources for you all to be using it successfully. Great. So again, variety of teams. We'll move on. I'll give it over to Marcus now to go into actually using MKCAD.
All right, hi everyone. I'm gonna wait a sec. I hope Mark or Mackenzie will turn over the screen share to me. Here we go. Great. All right, hi everyone. I hope you all can hear me and see the screen here. For those that don't know me, my name is Marcus Bernstein. I'm gonna go through a quick introduction of myself and my relationship with all of this, and then we'll get into tonight's webinar. So first off, I'm a first alumni. I started in FLL, team 2890, and I was on team FRC team 1836, the Milken Knights, for a couple years. I've been involved with FIRST since about 2010. I currently mentor FRC team 7599, Alpha Blue. I'm also the Philadelphia Onshape user group leader, the developer of MK CAD, which is one of the things we'll be talking about in the webinar tonight. And generally in life, I'm a product design student at Drexel, where obviously I use Onshape daily in my coursework and that sort of thing. Tonight's webinar, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things related to Onshape and Onshape for education. Obviously, the first is I'll talk about educational initiatives for Onshape. I'll go into best practices for learning Onshape and using the Onshape Learning Center. Then I'm going to touch on the MKCAD Parts Library and first specific feature script tools. What those mean briefly for those that don't know is MKCAD is a parts library that I developed a couple of years ago with my team, the Milken Knights, that's the MK and MKCAD. It's a parts library similar to Onshape's standard content that houses tons of common COTS parts, common purchase parts in FRC. That library kind of simplifies the workflow for teams to pull parts like gearboxes or bearings or whatever into their assemblies. And after that, I'm going to talk about feature script tools. Feature script is Onshape's platform where users can develop, they can actually write the code for their own features in the same language that features like extrude or loft or fillet were written. There are a lot of first specific feature script tools, and I'm going to highlight a couple in the webinar today. I'm going to show a video about the team's workflow, which is a great way to incorporate and involve your entire team in the collaborative nature of Onshape. I'll show a couple quick case studies of public robots, public Onshape documents that you can take a look at for more examples, and then we're going to touch on how this all ties into Robots to the Rescue. First off, Onshape for education. I assume most of the people on this webinar are in part of the education platform for Onshape, but I think it's worth highlighting anyways that obviously there are different modes of using Onshape. There's the general, a lot more permissions and access just for being an educational user that's a student or a mentor or teacher. Doesn't necessarily require an EDU email. I know there are always concerns about that. So anyone involved with the FIRST robotics program, a mentor, a student, a teacher, whatever your affiliation may be, can sign up for this Onshape for education system. It's equivalent or very similar to the standard plan, and it enables the sharing in the team's workflow. It's a really important part of how I use Onshape and how tons of teams use Onshape throughout FIRST. There are a lot of incredible tools for learning Onshape. I kind of learned it at the beginning through Onshape for FRC tutorials and Chief Delphi. Since when I started using Onshape a couple years ago, things that have become more popular include the Onshape forums, where tons of users are posting their own questions or ideas. Mentors, regardless of team affiliation, often tend to be very helpful. I just wrapped up an Onshape 101 class internally for FIRST students. I think a couple folks from that class actually tune in tonight. There are a lot of mentors, regardless of if they're on your team or other teams that have been teaching Onshape and are happy to continue to do so. Similar to my Onshape 101 class that I've taught over the last couple months, there is a lot of community-based learning opportunities within FRST Robotics, and you can see those opportunities showcased throughout Chief Delphi and other platforms. The last big one that I think is worth highlighting is the Onshape Learning Center. You can find that at learn.onshape.com, and it's a really incredible series of resources. There are 4 different sections: instructor-led trainings, those are like live virtual trainings by Onshape experts; self-paced courses, those are like brief videos and modeling exercises that are designed for you to learn Onshape at your own pace. There are technical briefings, where there are kind of videos and other things to demonstrate best practices and the best way to use Onshape. And the last is videos, webinars like these that are showcased for the entire Onshape community. It's a great opportunity to tune in and continue to learn if you weren't able to attend those webinars. So the Learning Center and all of the other platforms are really great ways to learn Onshape and continue to develop your skills if you're just getting started. Now to the bulk of our presentation today, I want to talk about the MK CAD Parts Library and a couple of other things that have come with it. The MK CAD Parts Library started as a concept maybe in 2016 or 17, something like that, and it was designed initially to be a platform where teams, rather than downloading CAD models from suppliers and then bringing them into their assemblies, it was designed to be obviously a library where people could access this public parts library and use it for all of their common parts to pull in anything like motors or gears or sensors or wherever it may be. You can kind of see it. And it was a great opportunity to highlight the insert versus import workflows in Onshape. So obviously, when you're inserting parts, you can either import them from other documents or you can insert them. They're native to Onshape. That insert workflow involves any public parts. So you can go in and you can grab public documents. You could even grab CAD models that I made years ago that are public. We kind of use that workflow to develop the Onshape, or to develop this parts library and the entire process for pulling things into your CAD models. Another thing worth highlighting is since the MK CAD Parts Library was developed, Onshape has also rolled out standard content. Those are kind of a series of common fasteners and other things like that are common and standard across just about everything. So in MK CAD, there are common things, 1032 nuts, stuff like that are really common in FRC. But Onshape also has their own parts library, which is a little better integrated, where you can pull in fasteners and other things that are standard, and you can modify them on the fly. One of the things that's really nice about MK CAD is when you initially bring in a part from a supplier, say they have a step file or whatever, oftentimes the product details aren't quite right. Maybe the colors aren't right, or the weight isn't set. That's the most common issue, is the weight is just not set when you bring in an imported part, or it's not quite optimized to work in Onshape. We've designed MK CAD to ensure that all of the weights are set, a lot of the colors are right, and it's optimized to actually work in Onshape in case you need to make adjustments or changes. One of those big adjustments or changes is like changing different individual parts within the context of a larger part. And I'll show an example later on when I demo this tool. For example, if you want to bring in a gear into Onshape and you think you need a 22 tooth gear, but you actually need an 18 tooth gear. In the initial workflow, you would have had to download the 22 tooth gear from one of our COTS suppliers, delete it from your assembly if you need to make those changes, and download the 18 tooth gear, put it in the assembly, and all of that stuff requires a lot of extra effort. One of the nice things that a lot of the people managing the MKCAD library have done since I've been a part of it, there's obviously a current team that's managing it now that I'm an alumni and less involved in the program, they've set up a lot of really incredible configurable parts. So say you import that or you insert that 22 tooth gear and you realize later on you need to change it to an 18 tooth, you just right click it and you can change it up, and that extends to pulleys, that extends to sprockets, that extends to Versa rollers, that even extends to gears within gearbox assemblies. I'll get to the demo of that a little later. The other thing that I'm going to highlight today, and the big thing, is FeatureScript tools. FeatureScript is Onshape's platform where users can write their own features similar to extrude or loft or fillet, but they can write their versions. There are a lot of really incredible ones that like prominent Onshape users have developed for general use. There are also a lot of really awesome ones that have been developed specifically for FRST. I made a couple years ago, and there are some more active first users that have made a lot of really cool ones. What I'm going to do now is slide over to Onshape, and I'm going to hopefully, if it works, do a demo of how you can use the MK CAD parts library as well as those feature script tools to improve your Onshape workflow. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to design a West Coast drive, and hopefully I'll be able to do it in about 10 minutes. I hope that this shift worked over here to go over to my Onshape. And what I'm going to do now is, obviously I'm working in a parts studio. I'm just going to do maybe a 10-minute demo here of making a West Coast drivetrain. The goal, and obviously right now I'm doing just preliminary sketching that many of you already know how to do. These are just to get some parts already out there so that I can show the first tool that I think is worth highlighting. In the parts studio, I'm going to show a lot of the feature tools, and then after that, I'm going to show some of the assembly tools that are included in MK CAD.
As Marcus is kind of getting set up here, just a reminder, if you have any questions or anything like that, just drop them in the Q&A. We have a few people here that can help to answer questions as Marcus continues on, and also we can call anything to Marcus's attention kind of as you're going. So thanks.
Thanks, Mark. So right now, as I finish up this first sketch, I'm going to highlight one of the first awesome feature script tools that was made specifically for FIRST, but obviously made by a FIRST alum, but also obviously has applications beyond FIRST. And that tool is the extrude individual tool. So as you guys can see here, if I do a simple extrude based on this sketch, it's clear from the top view that I wanted 2 cross members and 2 drive rails. With the original Onshape tool, because of the logic that exists, it's going to make it all one specific part. What I'm going to do now is demo how to pull feature scripts into your Onshape document. And then once those are in, I'm going to demo the first one, extrude individual. So on your Parts Studio toolbar, if you go all the way to the end, these feature scripts right here, you'll notice that I have a lot of them as I use Onshape frequently, and I've made a lot of feature scripts. If you go to the bottom, or if you don't have any, it should be right at the top there, you'll find Add Custom Features. What that gives you is this platform to add custom features via other documents or this document internally. If you go to public, there's an opportunity here to search for the different features that you want to add in. I'm lucky because I know the name of the feature script documents that I want to add in. Today, I'm going to use a couple of different ones. The name of the document, Julia Schatz made it. I think Julia is an alumni at FRC. Julia's made a lot of great feature scripts recently, and I'm going to showcase a couple of them today. If you go into feature scripts, you can pick the individual ones that we're going to use. If you just click these, or you click the drop down and you click the specific one, it's going to bring them into your thing. I have all of the ones that we're going to showcase today already, but if you just click them, you can bring them into your own platform. So obviously the first feature script that I'm going to show is called extrude individual. And as I showed earlier, if you just extruded this sketch, it would extrude them all as the same part. These are 4 separate parts, 2 drive cross members and 2 drive rails. These are all parts of the West Coast drive, but I want them to be separate parts so that I can go and throw them on a mill, throw them on a router, and manufacture them separately. What I'm going to do is showcase the extrude individual tool by selecting each of the separate sketch regions that I want to extrude. I'm going to set them to 2 inches tall here. And as you guys can see, these are all 4 separate parts. I can hide them, I can do whatever with them. They're 4 separate parts that are actually a part of this document. The next thing that I'm going to do in our drive rails is I'm going to put in our bearing holes. These holes are obviously for the bearings that are going to be a part of this drivetrain. I'm going to set the center of that bearing hole, and then these next ones are going to be a little arbitrary, the ones on the side. Again, if I'm doing anything that doesn't make sense to you in Onshape, feel free to use that question platform that Mark just highlighted to ask questions about what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. I've been using this tool for a while, and obviously I work the way that I tend to work, but there are definitely other ways to accomplish the things that I'm doing as well. Feel free to ask questions about what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. Set up these bearing holes right here so that hopefully if we have 4-inch wheels, I just made construction geometry to test if it fits, and it seems like it won't. So what I'm going to do now is pull it a little closer, and that's going to fit nicely if I put a 4-inch wheel in there. I'm going to do a simple extrude remove, and I'll set it through all on both sides just to make our life easier. I'm going to go with a merge with all, and that's going to put the bearing holes that we want. Now that that's all done, I'm going to show the second feature script that I want to highlight today, and it's a really cool one called, what is it called? Tube Converter. This feature script kind of highlights that FRC teams often use hole pattern tubes. These are 2x1 tubes that have a hole pattern in them, and you can use that hole pattern as kind of a standard system. This is another feature that you could find in that feature scripts document I showed last time. Julia Schatz made it, and it's really cool. So if I select Tube Converter 1, it requires a couple of things. It wants to know what bodies do I want to convert. That's asking what parts do you want to work with, basically. I'm going to select these 4 parts. I'm going to hollow out the tube to the wall thickness that I set. It's going to set up the hole pattern. It can exclude certain phases if I want to. And if we set up that hole pattern normally, this bearing hole would interfere with a hole pattern thing right there. This feature script was designed intelligently such that it avoids certain things. And say I want to change the hole spacing to something like 1/2 inch, I can do that very easily. It will take a couple seconds to load up rather than going into the part and modifying it. It just does it very quickly and easily. It's a really incredible tool, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of FRC teams that use hole patterns similar to these. It's a really great opportunity to just make your life easier and make changes easier within Onshape. The last thing that I'm going to do, I'm actually going to go back into this sketch here, and I'm going to quickly put in some holes to mount our gearbox, and then we're going to move on to the assembly to showcase MKCAD. These dimensions, I'm kind of guessing and kind of doing based on what I remember. I'm not sure if they'll be exactly right, but one of the nice things about the way that we're setting this up here is we're doing it in a robust way such that if I need to make changes later on, I can go back in and make those changes very easily. That said, I'm pretty sure those dimensions are right, so we're going to go with them. It's going to put in those gearbox mounting holes here and there. And now I'm going to hop over to the assembly. First off, in the assembly, I'm just going to insert Part Studio 1. We could sit here and mate all of it, but because of the way that we've set up the Part Studio, I'm just going to group it. And what that means is that they're now all together grouped. Doesn't require any specific mates or stuff like that. If you were doing anything more complicated, it might make some sense to mate it. But in this context, it's nice to just do that quickly because I assume folks are either already knowledgeable about the mate process or can use the Onshape Learning Center to learn. I have a fasten mate right here just to kind of keep the drive base in place, and I'm going to hide that mate as well as the origin just because it doesn't look very nice. What I'm going to do now is highlight the MKCAD workflow, and as I mentioned, MKCAD is a parts library. Because I'm on the developer team, I have it right here, but for those of you that are trying to use it, here's how you can insert parts via MKCAD, and I'll also hopefully show some standard content stuff as well. If you go to insert right here, which is the main way that you insert stuff into assemblies, and you go to other documents, find public at the bottom here, and you search MKCAD space dash space, and then whatever you want. So we're going to start with bearings. What's going to happen is it's going to show up the MKCAD libraries, both the MKCAD bearings, as well as some configurable bearings, which I'll highlight in a moment. So if I want to pull in a configurable bearing right here, I found this one, MKCAD space dash space bearings. I'm going to go very common bearing used in FRC, and that's what we're going to use in our West Coast drive. Next, I'm going to go back into other documents just to showcase again, and I'm going to go MKCAD-sprockets. We're going to grab the sprockets, maybe Andy Mark or West Coast product sprockets that we can use in this assembly. I have MKCAD sprockets configurable. It seems like it's a copy though. If I can't find the original, we'll just go with that. But it's nice to use the original ones. Although, of course, a couple people have made copies to make changes on their own or whatever that might be, and that's totally fine. Though if you are having trouble with MKCAD tools, try to use the original ones because they tend to be the most robust and well maintained. What I'm going to do now is I'll do a revolute mate of the bearing to the sprocket. And then I'm going to showcase for the first time, and we'll do it a couple times in this, one of my favorite Onshape tools, and that's the replicate tool. It looks like this Lego guy right here. And the replicate tool kind of matches mates and replicates parts two other similar faces. So if you'll notice, I have this bearing right here and I want to replicate it on the other side of the sprocket. What replicate is going to do, and this is not a first specific tool, this is an Onshape tool, which is the Lego guy up here. It has this blue circle right here. So it's going to look for geometry on whatever face I select that's similar to that. So if I select this face here, it's going to replicate that and make a new mate that's similar. Those mates are independent, right? So if I say want to make a change, I can do an offset or whatever. It's not going to affect the other one. Those mates are independent of each other. The next thing that I'm going to add in is the wheels. Oh, that's my internal MKCAD thing. MKCAD wheels. This one I don't think has a configurable one, but you can just grab whatever wheels you would like. And even if there isn't a configurable option, it's very easy to go back in and change it. I'm going to grab in a 4-inch wheel because that's what we checked in the Parts Studio. That looks good. I'll do another group just because these are two separate parts, the tread and the actual wheel body. And then I am going to do another revolute mate to attach that to this right here. That seems to be done and great. And so now we're going to copy this bearing and sprocket and wheel assembly into the other parts of this document. The first thing that I'm going to do is fasten mate this bearing on the outside into here. It's not quite what I wanted. I want to put it in the bearing hole. And as you guys can see, the wheel now went over there. The sprocket you can kind of see on the inside, and the bearing is there on the other side. What I'm going to do now is showcase that replicate tool one more time. So I have the tread, the wheel, the bearing, the sprocket on the inside, and the other bearing. And I'm going to tell it the faces to find a match in. So I want it to find matches on that face. I'm going to showcase two more quick MKCAD inserts, and then we're going to kind of wrap up this demo and finish it up here. The first, again, if I go to other documents in public, I'm going to throw in a gearbox, MKCAD gearboxes, and I'm going to use this gearbox, and I'll do another example with the bearings to showcase kind of the configurable parts within MKCAD in case you need to make changes later on. So if I go into assemblies over here and I want to grab, say, I like the West Coast Products flipped gearbox. It's a new one that they came out with, and it's very cool. I'm going to pull it into the assembly, and as you guys can see, it looks like that. I'm going to do two rather than replicate it, because if we wanted to replicate it, it would flip it over. If you don't, actually, I apologize. I'm going to switch to, I'm going to do this one. I think it'll fit better with this drive base, and then I'm going to go back and delete the other ones. I also apologize for the kind of slow workflow here across running Onshape. In this webinar, it tends to slow Onshape down just a little bit, but it's still operating at a reasonable pace, I think, for this. So if I have these two gearboxes right here, I'm going to go ahead and mate them in place. So I'm going to use this hole, just kind of line it up nicely. I'll do a quick fasten mate between that, and I forgot. Oftentimes in FRC, we want to omit those bearings just so that the gearbox fits. I'll do that quickly, and then I'm going to go back and grab the gearbox. I want to make sure the orientation is about right. Just going to go in like that. Then I'm going to match it on the other side, and then I'm going to showcase one of the cool things about MKCAD and its configurable parts libraries. I'm also going to take this opportunity to shout out the MKCAD developer team. I don't super run MKCAD anymore. I use it a lot and I remain involved, but there's a really great team of developers who are more actively involved in FRC. They're mentors, and I think a student or two that have been putting in a lot of hard work to update this with new CAD models like these gearboxes and create great resources for you guys. So I'm going to showcase two of the configurable options for this thing here. And the first is with this gearbox. So as you guys probably notice, this gearbox, the shaft is a little bit too long for this wheel. Now maybe you want to have that extra length for a shaft collar or whatever. I'm going to assume for the purpose of this that you don't, you want to put a bolt and a washer on the end or whatever. What I'm going to do is measure the difference in length and copy that here at 1.875. And now what I can do is go and I'm going to select both of the gearboxes. Right click any assembly or part in there, I can hit change configuration, assuming it's a configurable part. And what that's going to do, if you remember when I had this set up before, it's going to allow me to change the configuration of these parts. So what I did is I had it say 2 minus that difference. I can also use this opportunity to change that gearbox to mini sims. I can change the reduction to whatever I want it to be. And once I have it generate and click the check, it's going to load in a minute here and make all of those changes for me. So in case you want to use a different configuration of an entire assembly, it's going to go ahead and change all of the ratios and stuff like that. It's going to take a little while, but there you go. And so you can see that's now moved over. The gears that are involved are different, and these appear to be mini sims. I'll show one more quick demo of the configurable option, and I'm just going to do it with this one, but as you guys probably remember from the last one, you can do this with any number of the same type of part as you would like. So if I click this bearing here and go to change configuration, say I want to actually use a Thunderhex bearing or change to a radial bearing, that's just a couple clicks and I can go in, make that change, and it's automatically, one, going to retain the same mate connectors and mates relative to the other parts, and two, it's going to obviously change the instance of the part that we're grabbing. I'm going to do one more quick demo of MKCAD here, and then I'm going to go back to my initial parts library and wrap up. If I go to MKCAD Versa, I'm going to find a lot of the like Vex, Versa, gussets, and that sort of thing, as well as some Versa rollers and other stuff. I'm going to grab a T gusset, and I'm going to use that T gusset to, let's see, oh, that's a good one. I'm going to use it to hold the drivetrain together. Again, this is not a fully detailed model, but I think that it'll get the job done in terms of demonstrating MKCAD tools. And obviously at the end, we'll open the floor for questions. If folks want to see other demos, I think there will be an opportunity for that. And if not, people can reach out. Oh, that's not what I wanted. And if not, people can reach out to me via Chief Delphi or Slack or however folks can get to know me. Though obviously the PTC Academic team might be a better group to reach out to for questions about robots to the rescue or other Onshape specific questions. As you can see, I did a replicate there. As I mentioned at the beginning, the replicate makes these totally separate instances and totally separate mates. So I'm going to go in, and obviously that's not in the right orientation. I'm going to rotate it, and it only rotates that one. It's not going to go back and rotate the other ones. Do the same for this one over here, and then I'm going to kind of wrap up this model and demo and go back to my PowerPoint. But I hope this demo was helpful in kind of demonstrating two of the really awesome feature script tools. There are a couple other great ones, including like Fill It All and pocketing and that sort of thing, Fast Lighten. There's one correct shaft length, add-on snap rings and that sort of thing. Most of those are either within MKCAD or the library that Julia Schatz just put out. We showed the extrude individual feature script, as well as the MKCAD tools for configurable things, and a ton of different examples of bringing in the bearings and the sprockets, as well as just my general workflow for working on mechanisms like this. I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint here. So one other thing that I wanted to highlight within Onshape is the Onshape Teams workflow. Now, originally in Onshape, or maybe if you're just doing it on your own or with a small group, you have an individual document and you can share it with a document, or you can share it with other users within Onshape to kind of highlight the collaborative nature of the platform. What I'm going to do today is show this video, and maybe I'll go on mute, that Onshape put out to highlight the Onshape Teams workflow and how it makes it easier for your entire FRC robotics team to collaborate on an individual robot or a mechanism or a project as a whole.
Marcus, I don't think we're going to get the sound of the video, so you might just want to talk through anything that you're anything that would be said in the video.
I was wondering the same thing. I'm now going to narrate this video. So just kind of showing this again, see an opportunity to show Onshape teams. And as you guys can see, if you go into the manage account menu, which is up there, you can find Onshape teams and create a team. You make a name and a description for your team, and then you can add people to that team that now exists. You add in their email, and if they have an Onshape account, it shares it with them. If they don't have an Onshape account, it's going to create an Onshape account for them and send them an email to add them to that team. You can either make them a member so that they're a part of it, or you can make them an admin, and it gives them additional privileges to adjust that team. Obviously, you can add multiple people. I'm not sure that there is a limit. You can change their permissions for each of them. You can add them and delete them and change them if your team changes or alumni graduate, whatever that may look like. And obviously, you can delete teams down here. So if you go back to the documents page, now you can see all of your Onshape teams will be down there, and I'm not going to go and do a demo, but all of the Onshape teams and affiliations you have will show right there. And when you're creating a document, you can obviously share with the entire team rather than individuals, and you can adjust the permissions of it there. This was made in Onshape. Look, it's going to be a little different, but FRC 5803, there are all of these robots, either 2020, 2018 robots. This is a project that my old team worked on. This is even an FTC robot that I think it uses some MKCAD or these feature script tools, but I'm not even sure. What's nice about FRC is the nature of gracious professionalism, and there are a lot of really incredible teams with designers far better than I am that are putting out great Onshape resources, full robots, or even individual mechanisms. And those are great opportunities to learn about the tools like MKCAD, like feature scripts, and others that these teams are developing internally that helps to make them some of the best in the world. Feel free to look up these robots or ask me questions about individual projects or 1836 projects. And 1836 is the team that I graduated from in 2018. Each of these robots and tons more are publicly available on the internet, and they're great opportunities to learn more about how to use these for specific Onshape tools. At this point, I want to tie everything back to robots to the rescue, and then once I wrap up, I'm going to hand the audio back over to Mackenzie to wrap up. First, Onshape's Robots to the Rescue. It's put on by PTC and Onshape working together. It's a great design challenge within the first realm, and it's a great opportunity to highlight your skills now being a part of Onshape for Education. It's a great opportunity now that you're using the Onshape Learn tools, the Learning Center, and that sort of thing to practice the tools that you've learned within a specific competition. Using the MK CAD parts library and feature script tools is highly suggested in Robots to the Rescue. Robots for that challenge will certainly use common FRC parts and will be constructed with similar to FRC methods. And so these feature script tools, as well as the parts in MKCAD, purely exist to make your life easier. You can pick and choose if and when you want to use them, but it will be a big help to putting your robots together for Robots to the Rescue. Whether you're working within your individual team or just a couple people, or you've built an entire alliance of different robots and different teams, I highly recommend that you work with the team's workflow. And I hope that one of the moderators can send that link. It's on the Onshape website. If not, I'll send it in the chat once I'm done talking here to the actual video with Cody's narration. But using the Onshape Teams workflow, it can make your life a lot easier with either a couple people or your entire team or an alliance in this case. It's a great way to share your entire project and work together. The last thing again is case studies that we just looked at. These are great ways for you to learn from other teams and how they've been using Onshape and take those lessons back to your own entry for Robots to the Rescue. At this point, I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening to me talk, as well as using the MKCAD parts library, using some of the great feature scripts that I and other people I've worked with have developed. I wish you all the best of luck in Robots to the Rescue, and feel free to reach out to me with questions or comments about any of the tools that I highlighted today. Mark, do you want to hand the screen share back to Mackenzie? Or
Sure.
I can keep it, but I think I can keep it here.
Yeah, keep it here for a little bit. I think you might have some questions coming in that maybe going to a demo would be good for. So as you know, we have time here, guys. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them in. One of the first questions that you went over, Marcus, but it might be good just to show it again is how do you get to MKCAD, right? If you're creating a new assembly from scratch, how do you start to bring parts in from that MKCAD library?
Sure, I'll do another brief demo here. So say I make a new assembly studio and I want to just start with something new at MKCAD. Blank assembly, if I go into insert, which is the usual way that you insert anything over here, you can find the parts in your current document. If you go to other documents up here and then public, that's where you can find any public thing. You can search other projects, other whatever it may be. You search MKCAD space dash space, and then whatever you want to add. So say it's a gear, MKCAD gears, it should be gears. You can find the MKCAD parts library for gears. If you want Versa parts, you do MKCAD Versas, you do whatever it may be. Obviously, if you use different terminology for different things, I can't quite type in MKCAD pinions, you might call things different things. Feel free to reference Chief Delphi or other platforms for the specific naming or terminology of that stuff. Obviously, these are not going to come up, but as you can see, other MKCAD tools have shown up anyways, and this is actually a great opportunity to showcase all of the different ones. So an MKCAD swerve, sprockets, hubs, pneumatics, wheels, spacers. I'm not going to sit here and read all of them, but there are tons of really great tools that you can access by hitting the insert button, going to other documents up here. There are 3 different tabs, and this is where you would find the standard content that I mentioned. If you go to the bottom of the other documents tab, there should be public right around here, and make a search of MKCAD space dash space, and then whatever you want to grab, it's going to show up nicely here. If you want to see all of MKCAD, I think you can just search this, although a lot of the different copies are going to show up, so that might not be the most helpful way of grabbing things. I hope that was a helpful demo to whoever asked.
That's perfect. And a suggestion came in just as you were doing that. Basically, someone said it might be useful to also show how to find MKCAD from the main page and create a label for it. Apparently that has been helpful for some people. So I think that's referring to in Onshape going to publics when you're on the documents page, going to public on the left, searching for MKCAD and labeling some of those things. Labels are a way in Onshape to basically tag different documents that you may want to reference or want to categorize and to use it that way. So yeah, I believe if you go to public there on the left, Marcus, and then you can type in the same thing. This is essentially just the same workflow, just a different view of it. This is another way if you just wanted to browse the files here, and for different parts you can tag them as a particular label if you wanted to reference that for some reason.
So if I right-click something here, I can create a label that this is the true MKCAD pneumatics, other than a copy, or maybe you want to make it easier for you to find. I don't really use the labels workflow, though that is one way that I've certainly seen teams or individuals use to make their life easier. You can create a new workflow, or you can create a new label and then search your labels, and maybe you make all of them the same label, or however you want to make that easier to find for you.
Yep, great. And then there was a question, is there an angle mate and is there a width mate?
There's not necessarily an angle mate or a width mate within Onshape, as I assume you're imagining or thinking from another parts or from another system, although there are ways to accomplish that, and I can show a quick demo of how I would do the angle mate. I think by the width mate, you mean something like a planar mate with a little bit of separation apart. I'm going to use this as a dummy model to show how I would do either of those. They're not the cleanest ways of doing it, and there are 2 different ways that I would do it. The first is that, say I wanted to do this, put this gusset on this tube at a weird angle. There are 2 ways that I would do that. The first is I can make a mate connector on this origin, on this origin entity, being that right there, and I can realign it using various ways that, I can go ahead and rotate it here. So say I want it to be 30 or 23 degrees. That mate connector has now rotated. So rather than setting up my mate, I can do a fasten mate. Rather than setting that up to mate to an original mate connector on this tube, which would be at a 90-degree angle, I can grab this specific mate connector, which is at that weird angle, and it's now successfully at that weird angle. There are obviously use cases where you would want to do that. There's a little bit of a different way that you could do it, which is frankly kind of wonky, but it's a totally valid way if this is how you want to do your stuff. And I think it's with the Revolute mate. So what you can do is say I make a Revolute mate with the same, I think I use this hole and this hole right here. The Revolute mate constrains dimensional movement, but it leaves rotational movement open. So if I leave it like that, I can obviously rotate this. What I can do next, if I don't have another hole or something clean to mate to, I can go back into my Revolute mate and set limits. Say I set the limit to 23 degrees and the minimum here and the maximum both to 23 degrees. It's a little wonky, but frankly, like, it worked. Those are two of the different workflows that I would suggest if you want to do things at specific angles, though I will also highlight that any of the mate prompts have the opportunity for you to adjust mates by 90 degrees very easily. Or ideally, you have other geometry somewhere in your part that you can work with. The second thing, when you say a width mate, I assume you mean something similar to a planar mate with an offset. And for that, I would suggest the same two things. Build a mate connector based on a prior mate connector. Say we use this center point of that face. I can now move it. Say I want to move it 2 inches up or whatever. The mate connector now exists in space, and I can go ahead and do a fasten mate from this to that mate connector up in space. It's not the easiest way to do it, though that is a nice way to make a reference. These are all the mates up here, and there are great resources in the Onshape Learning Center that show best practices for how to use all of the mates. If I were asked on the spot, how would I accomplish a width mate or mate at a weird angle? These are the ways that I would give you, although there probably are cleaner and better ways to accomplish both of those things.
Excellent. All right. Another question was, if we need to make a change to a non-configurable part from MKCAD, what workflow should we follow?
I think the best way to accomplish that is to make a new part studio and then use the derive tool, and I'll do a quick demo of that here. A common use case is, say you have a sprocket, and we did this in 2018, I think. Say you have a big sprocket for an arm and you want to put some extra mounting holes to get some leverage. You create a new part studio here and you use the derive tool, you'll find a thing similar to the assembly insert platform. You can go into other insert documents, go to public. If I go to MKCAD sprockets, I can then find the sprocket that I want, pull it into a part studio, and those features will then pull them. This one is the true one. Say I have a 35 plate sprocket and I want to use this 54 tooth gear or sprocket. That's huge, but it should be plenty big. So you want to do an arm. This is now in there, and you can even pull the sketch in if you really want to. I'm not going to for this. But now this geometry all exists in the part studio. And so whatever changes you need to make, say I want to go onto here and I want to put a hole in like that for a 375 bolt. So you want to do that to attach it to the rest of the arm, or even if you want to have these within your part studio where you're doing the entire geometry, you can make that adjustment. And then if I pulled it into an assembly, I can go in and grab Part Studio 2, and that change will exist specifically within this instance of this derived plate sprocket. It obviously won't make that change throughout the entirety of MKCAD, but this is the recommended workflow if you need to make changes like this to a part in MKCAD.
Awesome. Couple of questions on folders and kind of permissions here. So can a folder of work or an Onshape document be set up so that the owner is a team rather than an individual?
I don't think anything exists in Onshape such that the owner is the team. Although one way that you can think about Onshape teams is that it in entirety is a folder. I hope I'm just going to showcase Onshape 101 here. Over the last 2 months, I've taught like an Onshape 101 class, and this is its own folder where all of the Onshape 101 documents exist. These are shared with everyone in the Onshape 101. That's like the class that I taught everyone on this team, and it's really easy. If we go into, say, our day one document, if I go into share, I'm still the owner of, I don't even think it shows, but I'm still the owner of, owner Marcus Bernstein. I'm still the owner of it. You can make your design lead or whoever the owner of it, and it's easy enough to transfer ownership within a team or to a different Onshape user. But this is still shared with the entire team, and I can make other people admins or whatever that may be within that Onshape team. You can make folders within an Onshape team, I believe. If I go to this and say test folder, I'm not sure that folders actually have their own ownership, but the parts within them do, and I believe you can put folders within an Onshape team, although that didn't work, so I'm not certain. No, but you can share a folder. I apologize. There's transfer ownership if you need to make changes. I can move it, but only to within other folders. But obviously I can share it with an entire team. Say I want to share that with, I'm not going to send it because it's going to email everyone, but say I want to share that with any of my team affiliations, I can. And then obviously I can adjust the permissions and options that they may have within that folder.
And just to chime in there, if there's something that you're worried about with maybe a senior owning documents and you don't want someone to graduate from the team and be the owner of this, you could also have maybe an administrator account that you make for the team in general that maybe all the mentors have access to. So you can let the mentors own it, or whoever you want to have access to that administrator account. So year after year, the documents can stay with the team.
And
that's a great idea.
You could also transfer ownership too. So if things are to change, or if you started it in one place and you need to transfer it over to maybe an administrator account, you can always do that as well. Just right-click transfer ownership. Cool. All right, next one. So are there any other libraries that we should know of? For example, will there be other suppliers making CAD libraries in Onshape that we should be looking out for?
There are a couple of other really great parts libraries. I know that there's a webinar later on showing a parts library for FTC. I don't know off the top of my head any of the other FRC libraries. I apologize. I am a couple years removed from FRC, so I'm not super active in all of this design stuff. Specifically within Onshape, I think just providing like their own native CAD files. So if you go to the Vex Pro or AndyMark website, they're going to post their CAD in whatever platform that they CAD in. And usually it's easiest for them to just post a step model. I think it's nice that you can rely on current Onshape users to maintain parts libraries like MK CAD. I know there are a lot of teams that create their own libraries for internal use, whether it's COTS parts or just parts they use very often. So if they have a standard elevator block or T-gusset or whatever that might exist, a lot of teams do it internally. I don't know off the top of my head a ton of or any other libraries, frankly, but I know that there's a future webinar where someone is going to talk about working with the FTC Kit of Parts. I assume that that's going to be a similar webinar to this one where they talk about FTC parts. Other than that, default to just checking the supplier website for step files of their CAD stuff, or I suppose do a search on one of the first forums like Chief Delphi for the other parts libraries that are a part of Onshape.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out for Tuesday of next week. We'll be going through the FTC Kit of Parts, and they also have an excellent thing. They've got Rev Robotics, they've got Pitsco, they've got a few of the kind of major suppliers that are on the FTC side. So if you're looking for those kinds of things, those are certainly out there to take a look at. All right, another question. Is there a way to mirror parts or subassemblies in an assembly? Not necessarily making mirrored versions, but just reflect parts to another side of a plane. For instance, mirror wheels, bearings, axles to the other side of the robot.
There is not a true mirror in assembly thing that exists in Onshape, and that is one of the biggest questions that I always get. How do we mirror things in assemblies? I would love to tell you that that is something that they're working on. I don't know what the Onshape dev team is working on. There are two like mediocre solutions for how to pull it off, although frankly, that is a tool that would be very nice for use, whether it's FRC or professionally or whatever it is. For those that don't know, the question was about mirroring parts and assemblies. So say that I did this drive rail as its own thing, and then rather than replicating it onto the other side, I wanted to mirror this onto the other side. There are two dopey ways that I could pull that off. The first is, if I go, well, I'm not even going to do that. The first thing to do, or way to do it, is you can use an assembly circular pattern to like almost pull it off. I'll show an example. So say I delete my initial fasten made to the origin. I'm going to make a copy of this as just like a dummy part, and we can get rid of it later. Now I'm going to make the origin visible again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this line. This is like not a great way to do this, but it is the solution that I have found and a couple teams do use. I tend to just work around it, but it is like a valid thing to address. Say I have this additional drive rail right here, and what I want to do is mirror it onto the other side. What I can do is I can make an assembly circular pattern. The instances, say I want to grab this. I could also obviously grab the entire drive rail, though there's already one over there, so I think that would be a bad demo. If I tell it the axis of pattern, I set that up around the origin so that I could use that as the axis of pattern. And as you can see, it's done it. It's not a true mirror, right? So if there are things that you don't want to rotate around, but you want to actually mirror like a sprocket offset or different motor layouts or whatever, it's not going to accomplish that properly. Although this is like a fair way to do it if you have a dummy part or if you have something in the middle. I know there are some teams that will like pull a little cylinder in the middle of their model. Again, there is not a true assembly mirror thing, though I assume that it's something either being discussed or in the works, and there are obviously ways to get around that. The other way is just to use a linear pattern, and then you can do a rotate or whatever. Not the cleanest solution and not the way that I would do it in another CAD platform, although that is a fine solution that works well with Replicate or any of the other assembly tools up here.
Yeah, along those lines, there was a call out here. So there's a replace instances from the feature list. If you want to maybe change everything from one type of a wheel to another type, that's another feature that was called out in chat. It could be useful. So replace instances there. And then I think we have time for one last question. I think this one's pretty interesting. So is there a way to make a dimension that is based on another dimension? Example, D2 is equal to D1 times 2.
Yep. I haven't done this in a long time, so I apologize if it gets a little wonky here. Onshape has variables. You can create a variable up here, and there are obviously different ones that you can use. One of the things that a cool team did, I think earlier this year or last year, and they shared the design with me, is they set up their entire drivetrain based on variables. So if I have one for length and I call it 24 inches, I'll move it up here so that it's earlier in the design. I have another one for width, and I'll call it 20 inches. These are just arbitrary numbers that I have made up. What I can do now is go into the sketch and set my dimensions based on those variables. So I can call out hashtag length, and it's going to do it. Hashtag width, and it's going to do it. And now what's nice about that, and I'll go back to addressing your question specifically in a minute, is obviously this is now following those dimensions as you saw the change. But if I go in and change that to 32 inches, it's going to make for a really robust model because that is going to change to 32 inches without even modifying that sketch. One of the things that you can do, and that won't make any sense within the context of this specific thing, but I'm fairly sure that you can do math based on those variables the same way that you could bingo. So if I say length times 2, again, does not make sense in this context, but if you want to do that, you totally can. Actually, here's a better example. So say I have a wheel well here. This is like the well within the common West Coast drive. It's a common thing that teams do so that they have some bumper support on the edges there. Rather than setting that dimension to 2, one thing that I totally could do is I could set, I could set this outside dimension to hashtag width. And then I could set the dimension between these two lines to hashtag width -4. You'll notice there that I had to set it to inches because Onshape doesn't know what 4 is. So I multiplied it by the inches constant. It's just like a weird thing that happens within Onshape, like math and that sort of thing. It's not something you need to worry about with simpler tools, but it's something that I've come to understand at this point. And those dimensions will change dependent on each other. And obviously I didn't make a new variable there. I totally could. So I could make a new variable, say, I think I can do this, hashtag length -2 times inches, bingo. And that is going to make that dependent on the other one. Again, if I change the length to 23 inches, it's going to change that, and it's going to change all of the other dependency that we put in the sketch that I have already forgotten that we set up. I hope that that's, oh, I made that an absurd number. It's going to take a while to load. But I hope that that was a helpful demo and kind of articulated the way that you can make certain dimensions dependent on others. Other than that, I would recommend just making geometry construction within a sketch, and that will make your life easier.
Cool. Well, that was an excellent explanation of parameters there, Marcus, and I think that's actually kind of all we have time for. So, Mackenzie, why don't you kind of close us out here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have several more webinars coming up, so we'd definitely love to have you all join those, or if you can send those out to your team if you know of anyone else would be interested in them. Our next one this week is going to be migrating your team from another CAD system if you've been using something else, getting all of that data into Onshape. And next week, we'll be talking about the FTC Kit of Parts, collaboration and versioning, and we'll get into that team panel, getting your submission ready, and then an office hour. And then as a reminder, this webinar was recorded, so if any of your team members weren't able to join or just interested in rewatching, you can definitely do that. I'd recommend that you subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to get that notification of when this comes out. It'll be on the PTC YouTube channel. And then something I might also recommend, if you liked watching Marcus go through that creation of the drivetrain, on YouTube when you rewatch it, you could slow that down and actually follow along to see what steps he went through. That could be a good exercise for you or anyone on your team to actually go through and learn how to do what he did. And then just a reminder that Onshape can work on any type of computer. So if any of your team members haven't been using CAD, maybe they haven't even thought about using it because they have a Chromebook or a Mac, you could definitely be getting more people on your team to be working on CAD with you. So I'd recommend reaching out to those people that might not be involved yet and remind them that they could actually be getting involved now. If you have any other questions, you can definitely reach out to us. If we switch over to the next slide, it'll have our email that you can reach out to at any time for clarifications or questions about this. And again, we look forward to having you at future webinars.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.